Today, we're diving into the incredible real-life story of a man who clawed his way from a small island to rule almost all of Europe, the one and only Napoleon Bonaparte. So, we're going to break down his unbelievable journey into 4 parts. We'll start with his lightning-fast rise as a soldier, see how he became an emperor, watch him conquer a continent, and then explore his epic fall from power. All right, let's jump right in. Napoleon wasn't born into French high society or anything like that. He was from an island called Corsica, and when he went to military school in France, the other kids actually made fun of his accent. He was a complete outsider. But then, the French Revolution turned everything upside down. All that chaos, well, for a brilliant military mind like Napoleon, it was the perfect opportunity to show what he could do. And boy, did he show them. His first big moment was at the Siege of Toulon. He came up with this genius plan using cannons, artillery, and totally forced the super powerful British Navy to sail away. Right then and there, everyone knew this guy was something special. And his career just skyrocketed from there. After that victory, he was promoted to brigadier general. And get this, he was only 24 years old. Just think about that for a second. Next, they gave him command of this struggling, poorly supplied army in Italy. What does he do? He turns them into an unstoppable fighting force, winning battle after battle. He became a national hero, practically overnight. So being a military hero was great, but it wasn't enough for Napoleon. Back in France, the government was a total mess, and he saw his chance. This time, he wasn't just planning to win a battle. He was planning to take over the whole country. So in 1799, he joins in on what's called a coup d'etat. It's a fancy term, but it basically means a quick, illegal takeover of the government. And just like that, he became the most powerful man in France, with the title of First Consul. But even that wasn't enough. By 1804, he decides he's going to be emperor. And at his coronation, he does something incredible. He takes the crown from the Pope's hands and puts it on his own head. The message was loud and clear. My power doesn't come from God or anyone else, it comes from me. Now, it wasn't all about power and war. One of his most important achievements, something that still affects the world today, was the Napoleonic Code. It was a single, clear set of laws for everyone. It protected private property, gave people religious freedom, and said jobs should go to the most qualified person, not just some rich noble's son. It was revolutionary. Okay, so now he's Emperor Napoleon, his ambition just explodes, and he sets his sights on dominating the entire continent of Europe. His army, called the Grande Armée, seemed absolutely unbeatable. His greatest victory came at the Battle of Austerlitz, where he completely outsmarted the combined armies of Russia and Austria. It's still studied today as a military masterpiece. But there was one enemy he could never quite beat: Great Britain. Since he couldn't invade their island, he tried a different tactic. He created something called the Continental System, which was basically a massive trade blockade to try and ruin their economy. The problem? It was almost impossible to enforce and ended up hurting everyone in Europe, including France. And this is where things start to go wrong. You see, even for an emperor, a grip on power can be fragile. For Napoleon, one catastrophic mistake would be the beginning of the end. That mistake was invading Russia in 1812. And he didn't go in small. He marched in with a massive army of over 600,000 soldiers. It was one of the largest European armies ever assembled. But the Russians were smart. They refused to fight a big, decisive battle. Instead, as they retreated deeper into Russia, they used what's called a scorched earth policy. They burned their own villages, crops, and supplies, leaving absolutely nothing behind for Napoleon's army to use. So when Napoleon finally reaches Moscow, he finds it deserted and on fire. Then, the brutal Russian winter sets in. The retreat back was an absolute nightmare. With no food and no shelter, the Grande Armée was destroyed, not by bullets, but by starvation and frostbite. Only a tiny, tiny fraction made it home. After that disaster in Russia, Napoleon was critically weakened. The other countries in Europe saw their chance, ganged up on him, and finally defeated him. He was forced to abdicate, which means he had to formally give up his throne as emperor. They exiled him to a small island called Elba. But Napoleon, being Napoleon, he escaped. He returned to France and managed to seize power again for a period we now call the 100 Days.
But it all came to a final crashing end at the famous Battle of Waterloo.
This time, his enemies weren't taking any chances. They sent him to St. Helena, one of the most remote, isolated islands on the entire planet. It was in the middle of nowhere, and it's there that he died 6 years later. So, after all that, who was Napoleon? Was he a hero, a brilliant modernizer who brought order and fair laws to a chaotic continent? Or was he a power-hungry tyrant whose ambition led to constant war and the deaths of millions? Honestly, historians still argue about it today, and that's what makes his story so fascinating.